These days, any AI-based slide tool looks great in the demo. You input a prompt and you get a beautiful slide deck as the output, and everything is hunky-dory. But the reality works a little bit differently. You would never take that output and go on stage to make your presentation. You first show your slide deck to your other stakeholders or your boss, and she says, now add one more step to the process. Convert your column chart into a pie chart and convert your data table into a quadrant chart. So by the time your pretty slide deck goes through this revision grinder, it doesn't remain pretty anymore. And in the process, you lose your time, your energy, and your sanity. But recently, I came across a tool that solves this problem beautifully. In fact, I would say that it is the only tool that survives your boss. It's called Beautiful.ai, and in this video, I'll show you how Beautiful.ai handles anything that your boss throws at it. And dare I say, it might even have her smiling in appreciation. I'm Ram Gopal from presentationprocess.com. We help you present your ideas better. Let us jump right in. Now, instead of boring you with a tutorial, let me tell you the story of Charles. Charles is a young executive, and he recently joined a company called Pulse Tech. He is very enthusiastic, but unfortunately, he is not good with design skills. Recently, his boss asked him to create a pitch deck for the company to be emailed to an important client. So he just finished his slide deck and he's taking it to the boss's chamber. Now, this is the scene. The boss looks at all the slides and then promptly does what a boss does. She says, now, Charles, this 3-step process should actually be a 4-step process. So please make the change and get back to me. Now, Charles takes back his PowerPoint deck and then he tries to add one more step in the process. So he makes a copy of this and then places it right next to the previous one. And when he goes to slideshow, he sees that the 4th step is not even visible. Then he selects everything and tries to readjust the size and everything goes awry. So he once again goes back and tries to group it together and then tries to adjust the size, and you can see that some are in 2 lines and some are in 3 lines, and he gets frustrated, and it is just the first slide. And while he is tearing his hair, Priya, his colleague, just walks past his desk and says, Charles, are you still struggling with this old way of creating your presentation? Haven't you heard of this new tool called Beautiful.ai? Now, Charles gets all excited and asks Priya, what is Beautiful.ai? Now, Priya says it's a simple AI-based tool with advanced technology that makes presentation creation a breeze. And she asks, do you have an outline for your presentation? And Charles says, yes, of course I have. So Priya then copies the outline, opens Beautiful.ai and says create with AI. And then she sticks the outline here and says enter. Now, Beautiful.ai generates an outline. Then she asks, Charles, do you have any file to add? He says, yes, I have an Excel file to add for competition landscape. So she adds that file and chooses a theme and says generate presentation. And almost in no time, the presentation deck gets generated. Now she tells him, let me show you how to add one more step to your 3-step process. So they go back to the slide deck, and here is the slide 3-step process. All she does is to click on this add item button and the new step gets instantly added. And she looks at Charles and says, now observe this, the font sizes are recalibrated. The spaces between these items recalibrated. And this happens because of a unique technology called Smart Slides, which Beautiful.ai uses, which instantly recalibrates the font size, the visual hierarchy, white space, and everything to make sure that the look and feel of the slide is maintained whether you add or remove steps. So Charles feels all happy and takes this new slide deck and goes to the boss. Now, the boss looks at all the charts and she says, now, you've shown this fund allocation as a column chart. It actually should be shown as a pie chart. So please make that change and come back. Now, Charles closed his eyes for a moment and imagined how he would have handled such a request in his old software. He would have got a slide that looked like this, and then to change this column chart into a pie chart, he would have used a right click and then would have used change chart template and then would have chosen a pie chart and said, okay. Now, see the result. The column chart has definitely got converted into a pie chart, but all the details are lost. There are no numbers, there are no labels, and all the pie segments look exactly the same. So he has to make all the changes manually, make every single pie look different and add all the numbers, and that would have taken a lot of time for him. Unfortunately, he is now working with Beautiful AI and he says, "Boss, give me a second, I'll make the change." So he goes to this unique tool called Slide AI, which is the design assistant inside Beautiful AI, clicks, and then goes down and he sees this option where the information is visualized as a pie chart. He selects that and you can see the result here. Let me close this. The position of the title is now changed to accommodate the position of this pie chart. Every single pie looks distinct and all the data labels are very clearly shown and the explanation is moved to the side and this slide looks beautiful and it has happened in an instant. Now the boss started smiling a little bit and Charles walks back to his desk and he gives a thumbs up to Priya and asks, "Priya, I have a question. This is all fine when it is compared to PowerPoint, but if I'm using some other AI slide generation tool, can't I make all these changes by just prompting better?" Priya said, "It sounds easy, but it is not always very practical." Now, let us take this slide for example. Now, if you want to add a photo next to this bar chart, how would you give your prompt? Now, Charles thought a little bit. Now, Priya said, "Now look at this, how easy it is to make the change inside Beautiful AI." She selected the slide and then went to this place called layout and then she chose this option for sidebar and there is a space available here to add a photo. So you click here and you choose among all these stock photos that are freely available inside Beautiful AI and you can choose anything that you want. For example, you want to choose the image of an office building, you make the search and then hit enter and look for the options, pick the one that is right for you and instantly that picture gets inserted onto the slide and the slide looks beautiful. And she said one more thing. You might still be able to achieve this with a prompt, but what you can't achieve is the finer adjustment. For example, you go to the boss and show this, and she says, "Now increase the length of this bar chart and reduce the size of this photo a little bit." Now, how would you do that? Now, you need to reprompt once again, and for every minor adjustment, you need to keep on reprompting. Now, the problem with prompting for a specific slide is the outcome is not always predictable and consistent with the rest of the slides. Sometimes the slide that you've generated might have a different font weight, a different shade of blue might have got used, and your revised slide doesn't look consistent with the rest of the slides in your deck. And the more the revisions, the more inconsistency creeps in, and your slide deck doesn't really look that professional. Not just this, with other AI slide generation tools, every time you submit a prompt, AI credits get consumed, which means the more times you prompt for revising your slides, the more cost you end up paying. Right in the middle of creating your presentations, you hit that nasty limit reached warning, which means you can't generate more, the flow gets interrupted, the ideas get stalled, and you end up getting frustrated. But with Beautiful AI, there are no credit limits, which means you create endlessly, ideas keep flowing, your productivity is maximized, and you get amazing results. Now, Charles understood the issue and he asked Priya, "Now, how do I make that adjustment?" Now, she showed this. You see the handle here? You move this to the left. Now, you've increased the size of this bar chart. And now, moving this to the right, you have readjusted the size. Now, there is one more interesting thing. Now, try and move this picture out of this position. So, Charles really tried hard and he could not really move it out of the place. And she said, "This is the unique thing about Beautiful AI. It has something called design guardrails, which makes it almost impossible for anyone to design a poor slide deck using Beautiful AI. When you make this adjustment, notice that the picture is not getting squished. It is getting adjusted with the proportions intact, and that is the beauty of the design guardrails in Beautiful AI. Now, Charles got even more impressed, and just at that time, on the intercom, he got a call from his boss, and the boss said, "I have 3 more changes to make, so please come to my chamber." Now, the boss points to this 4-step process and says it actually should be a 3-step process, and you are right, Charles. So instantly, Charles goes to the 4th step and clicks on the cross, and now the slide gets readjusted. And she says, "Now I have a different change. I want this to be visualized more as a journey along a timeline, along a roadmap, rather than as a 3-step process." Now, such a request would have really stumped Charles of the past, but now with Beautiful AI, Charles can make the change very easily. So he selects this and then goes to this option here called Idea. And this gives him different ways to visualize this information. He sees that there is no roadmap, journey, etc. So he goes to switch to another slide and then looks for diagrams. And he sees that there are a whole bunch of options available for him to make the change. He goes to diagrams and then looks for journey, and then he selects this, and now the change is made instantly. Now the boss says, it's all good, but then this is not a continuous process. It actually is a finite process. So there should be a start and end point for this roadmap. Charles gave a polite smile. He clicked on the diagram and he said, okay, now let me add a start marker and the end marker. Now it has become a simple finite process with 3 steps, and the diagram looks beautiful. And the boss says, now this slide looks a little plain Jane. Can we make this a little more exciting? Because I cannot really see this roadmap very clearly. Now Charles said, okay, it's very easy. Let me now close this and change the color of this background. And he says, okay, now why not choose this color? Now the slide looked beautiful instantly. Now the boss smiled and she said, let us go to the second change. And she went to this particular chart, and now immediately Charles realized that the picture is there, which is just for demonstration purposes. So he wanted to delete it. So he selected this, closed it. Now the slide was reverted back to its original position. Now the boss said, there is a difference of 200% over the starter and the growth tier, and I want that reflected on the chart. Can you make that change? Can you add that label? Now Charles said, it's very easy. He selected the bar and there was this marker here. So he clicked on that and he went to show change or growth or CAGR, and then moved to the previous one and clicked outside, and there it was. The difference of 200% was shown instantly, and the boss got quite impressed. The boss smiled and then asked Charles, see, I have one more change to make. I know it's a complicated change, but then it'll really add value to our slide deck. And Charles was a little skeptical. He didn't really know what was coming. So the boss went to this particular slide and said, now competitive landscape is now shown as a data table. It is not very easy for people to understand the information. I want this change to a quadrant chart. I know it might take a lot of time for you to do the visualization. Can you do that for me, please? Now Charles said, boss, wait for a bit. And then he went to Slide AI, the trusted AI assistant. He clicked on it, and then there it was, the quadrant chart slides visualization. He clicked, and instantly the competitive landscape got converted from a data table to a quadrant chart. And let us close this, and this was the outcome, and the boss was extremely happy. But then suddenly that smile turned into a little bit of a frown. And then Charles asked her, what is the issue? The boss said, now all the slides in the deck look nice, and once we send this deck to our client, we don't really know what would happen then. Which slide would spark interest and which piece of information may not land. We don't really know anything once we send the deck to our client. So I don't really know how to solve the problem. Now, Charles thought about this a little bit and then said, boss, I may have a solution for you. Then he went to the deck and showed the option called share, and he went straight to share securely option and chose this one called viewer authentication. It said a more secure option requires viewer to sign up and validate email, track individual viewer activity with analytics. And he said, now once we send this by email, we can always go to analytics and take a look at the output here, and we can get information like unique viewers and average view time per slide, and it can really help us have an intelligent conversation after the slide deck has been sent. The boss was quite happy with the idea, but still wanted a bit of clarity on how this would actually play out. Now, Charles explained this carefully. He said, let us say we send this slide deck to the client, and we see that there is one slide where the client has spent a lot of time. And when we go through the slide, we see that it is about pricing or proposal, which means our next conversation with the client should be about pricing or proposal. So when we send out a slide deck created by Beautiful AI, we would be able to have a meaningful conversation with the client because we would be having analytics and information about which slide engaged and which slide was not really interesting to the client. And this tool is not available in any other AI slide generation tool, and that makes Beautiful.ai unique. Now, the boss was all smiles and she said, Charlie, now you really are an asset to the team. And Charlie was very proud of himself and he thanked Beautiful AI. And we take this moment to thank Beautiful AI for sponsoring this video. And if you want to be the Charles of your team, then you can always sign up for Beautiful AI by clicking on the link in the description box below the video. You get a 14-day free trial. Go through all the options inside the tool, and you'll be convinced that Beautiful AI has the ability to tackle any kind of request thrown at it by your boss. I'll see you inside the next video.